So how do people like Maul, Third Sister Reva, and Sabine survive being stabbed with a lightsaber? Well, that is quite the loaded question I received, and one that, unfortunately, I cannot fully explain. You see, surviving lightsaber wounds is a thing, and there's definitely lore explanations, but the problem is that Disney has not always done a good job at following the lore, even their own lore. So because of that, I'm in a position where I can explain Maul, and I can even explain Sabine, but unfortunately, I cannot explain the Third Sister Reva, because the truth is, Reva should have died. Her surviving is actually lore-breaking. So instead, what I'm going to do is explain just how Maul and Sabine survived, and then I will show how their reasons for surviving are the exact same reasons why Reva should not have. But before we get started, I sense a disturbance. Many of you haven't subscribed yet. If you love deep dives, spicy lore talk, and the occasional existential crisis about Star Wars canon, force push that button. It is the will of the algorithm. So to start off, let's get into how Maul survived being sliced in half by Obi-Wan. It all has to do with his Sith training. You see, Maul survived by using a Sith technique that allows one to keep themselves going by using corrupted dark side energy. In much the same way the Sith corrupt the dark side to amp their power, they can also use it as a life support system, achieved by feeding pure hatred into their dark side power to make it stronger. Then instead of using that power to attack, they draw it inward to sustain themselves despite having a fatal wound. And as long as they maintain the necessary level of hatred, the technique will hold. To give an example of how far you can take this technique, let's have a look at Darth Sion, also known as the Lord of Pain. Fans of the Old Republic stories know him very well, but for everyone else, Darth Sion is one of the most extreme examples of this dark side ability. Very long story short, Sion learned how to sustain himself regardless of how many wounds he received, and pushed this ability so far that by the time we see him in game, he is basically rotting flesh holding himself together through pure dark side hatred. But because he pushed himself to such extremes, he was nearly impossible to defeat in battle because it didn't matter if you were stronger than him or better with a lightsaber, he would tank everything you threw at him and just keep coming. Sion only died because the main character in Knights of the Old Republic 2, Mitra Surik, made him feel love again. He let go of the hate just a little bit and just poofed into dust. Now Darth Sion is by far one of the most extreme examples of this ability, but he is not the most extreme. Allow me to introduce ancient Sith Master Simus. During a time long before the Sith used the Darth title, Simus grew up alongside Marka Ragnos, and like Ragnos, he was in line to become the next Dark Lord. So in traditional Sith fashion, they dueled for the position, and Marka Ragnos took Simus's head clean off his shoulders. But because of Simus's unique powers, knowledge, and dedication to the dark side and the Sith, he stayed alive. This impressed Ragnos so much that he put Simus on his council, where he remained for an unspecified number of centuries. Not years, not decades, centuries. So now back to Maul, and the question here being, did he know how to use the dark side in such a way? And the answer is yes. Yes, he did. While not being a fully trained Sith, he was trained enough to be a proper Sith assassin, and on his own he managed to grow strong enough for Palpatine to openly recognize him as a rival. So this ability should be a part of his skill set, at least at a basic level. Now, did he have mastery of it like an ancient Sith master like Simus? Or even like a Sith Lord like Darth Sion? No, he did not. However, in Maul's case, he didn't have to. Sion's level of mastery allowed him to keep going for years, and for Simus, centuries. And it could have been longer for both had they not have been eventually killed by their enemies. But thanks to advanced technology, Maul didn't need nearly that much time. When his brother Savage finds him in the junkyard, he's already fixed up with prosthetics that he made by himself. The only reason he had not yet resurfaced was because the mental trauma of it all left him mentally broken, and it took Mother Talzin to bring him back to sanity. Now that explains how a Sith like Maul survived, but what about a Jedi, or in fact a barely trained Jedi Padawan like Sabine? Hers being the more controversial moment because she is stabbed in the same area as Qui-Gon Jinn, yet where he died, she lived. How does a barely trained Padawan survive a lightsaber stab that killed Qui-Gon Jinn, the man, the myth, the Jedi with the best hair in the Order? It all comes down to 3 words: immediate medical attention. You see, when stabbed, neither Qui-Gon nor Sabine die instantly. The real difference between them simply comes down to time. You see, when it comes to Sabine, Shin did not stick around to fight Ahsoka, so Ahsoka had no distractions keeping her from tending to Sabine, and because of that, in the very next scene we see Sabine in the medical bay, so that means Ahsoka wasted no time and managed to beat the clock. However, with Qui-Gon things are different. When he is stabbed, he is left lying on the ground because Obi-Wan is stuck fighting Maul, and yet Qui-Gon still stayed alive long enough to see the fight from start to finish and then give Obi-Wan his final words. Now I know some of you may try to argue that not much time passed because of the fight itself. It's easy to argue that Jedi and Sith are moving much faster when fighting compared to what we are actually seeing because of the use of cinematic time. And to that, I would say you are correct. they are moving faster than what the movie portrays. However, that doesn't change much because of two factors: the time that Obi-Wan and Maul spent separated by the blast doors, and the time Obi-Wan spent hanging while Maul was taunting him by sending sparks down. No actual fighting is happening in these moments, so it's all happening in real time. Plus, even though they are moving super fast when fighting, neither one of them are on the level of someone like Legends Luke, so their force speed is nowhere near something as ridiculous as light speed, or even the speed of sound. Heck, Obi-Wan was not even fast enough to clear the series of blast doors in time. So while it was fast, it was not that fast. So unfortunately for Qui-Gon, unlike Sabine, he just didn't have enough time. And even if he did, they are literally in the middle of a war zone. Good luck finding a medic while dodging battle droids and bureaucratic red tape. So that explains Maul and Sabine, but now it's time to address Reva. And like I said earlier, Reva cannot be explained, because the truth is, her surviving is 100% lore breaking. First of all, she could not have survived like Sabine because at no point do we see her receive any medical attention, so just like Qui-Gon, time should have run out for her. And on the other end, using the dark side to stay alive, Reva could not have done that either. Some might assume she could because of her training in the dark side, but here's the thing: Reva is an Inquisitor, not a Sith. There is a major difference. The Inquisitors were not trained with actual Sith teachings and knowledge. All they got were lessons on how to use the dark side to amp their strength in battle. They were intentionally trained poorly because Palpatine did not want any of them to possibly grow strong enough to be able to challenge him. He had to deal with that once already with Maul, and even with him, Palpatine had only trained him in the Sith arts for combat, yet he still managed to become strong enough to make Palpatine have to deal with him directly. So all the Inquisitors got was basic training in the Force along with some gimmicky lightsabers before being sent over to Vader. This is why the Inquisitors were failures in the first place. Not because they flat out suck, but because they were never given a fair chance to be great. We don't even know what any of their actual potentials could have been because they were never allowed to try to reach those potentials, for obvious reasons. So knowing all of that, and knowing that using the dark side to keep yourself alive is a Sith ability, something that you have to learn, and just being a pissed off Darksider isn't enough, then we all know for a fact that Reva did not know how to use it for herself. Even most actual Sith could not pull this off. Millions of Sith have fallen in battle throughout the many wars of the Star Wars timeline and failed to use this ability properly. If this ability were something that was easy to pull off, then the Jedi would have never wiped out the Sith in the first place. Only the ones who truly understood the mechanics of the ability and had true devotion to the dark side could pull it off. Which is kind of the point of the ability in the first place. It's supposed to be something that only above average Sith can figure out. And even if someone wanted to make the argument that she somehow figured it out herself, remember that this ability only works if you are 100% consumed by dark side corruption. You have to be full of pure hate and rage to be able to tap in. And how does Reva look after her stabbing? Not like an angry Sith. In fact, it's the opposite. They even give her a redemption moment and turn her back to the light. And we just went over what's supposed to happen if you do that while still with a fatal wound. So her living is lore breaking. And to add to that, I just have to say, from a storytelling perspective, her existence as a character would have been much more impactful if she would have just died here. Her surviving sucks all the life out of her dramatic defeat. And the addition of her finding out about Luke feels very forced. Just saying. Sometimes you have to be willing to let a character go in order to make them a good character, because an unexplainable lore-breaking survival is not a good look. I guess we can take this as another example as to why we should have gotten Stuart Beatty's Kenobi show instead. But anyway, that's it for today's breakdown. If you like this explainer and want more Star Wars deep dives, spicy takes, and canon breakdowns, make sure to force push that subscribe button. Got a Star Wars question that's been haunting you? Drop it in the comments, and I just might make it into a full video. And if you really want to support the Rogue Jedi Order, check out our Patreon. Help us build this new Order of Jedi. So until next time, may the Force be with you.